Hi, how was the conference? Did you like it so far? Yeah, there was some really good talks today, and one of the things like I really like talking last because then I get to reference back to other talks and like you know correct them. No, that's not what I'm gonna do. Uh, but I do have a question for you. How many of you have legacy code in your code base, like code that's really hard to change? Okay, how many of you love that code? Yeah, yeah. So the original title of this talk used to be How I Learned to Love Legacy Code. I changed it because that's still kind of a love-hate relationship. But there is this thing about legacy code. When people, when we talk about it, we almost always mention that we don't really like it. And it somehow still doesn't go away. And then people want to rewrite those parts or do something about it at least. But at the same time, I hear quotes like this. This is Joel Spolsky talking about why Netscape lost its market share. They did it by making the single worst strategic mistake that any software company can make. They decided to rewrite the code from scratch. Now, I mean, this is a Microsoft theme conference, so probably it's not fair to mention that there were other factors involved with Netscape. Uh, but yeah, I mean, large part of it was that they tried to rewrite the software, and Internet Explorer ended up being more attractive, which is like, really? Okay, so still we end up wanting to rewrite code. Why? And the other thing is, when we look at this quote, it's talking in absolutes. Like there is no nuance, there is no context. Like maybe it's not always true that it's a strategic mistake. Um, so when I see a quote like this, is very much talking in absolutes. That's kind of piques my curiosity. Is there something more to that? So this talk is about that nuance. Uh, okay, so let's talk a bit about the structure of the talk. So first of all, I want to talk about why people think that it's a bad idea to rewrite code. And during this part, you might feel like that this is that BuzzFeed article that lured you in with a clickbait, and you're not learning what you came for. But this is important. This is like the background for what I'm going to talk about later, and we will get to the point. Then next step is going to be, I will tell you the story of a bunch of rewrites and refactors that were successful, like large-scale stuff, not like this, oh, let's do some small rewrites here and there, and then eventually your code base will be great, because that's, by the way, that is something you should always do. Like leave the code base cleaner than you found it. Great stuff. It's not going to solve all your problems, right? So this is about the large-scale stuff that you cannot hide from your business, that you need to somehow mention that you are doing. So let's look at these case studies, and then I will explain why those case studies worked. Okay? And then that's basically where you will learn what you should be trying to do with your code base. So why are rewrites a bad idea? The design stamina hypothesis. Usually this slide comes up a lot at conferences. I haven't seen it today, but maybe I just wasn't in the right talk. But the idea of this is totally hand-wavy pseudoscience. So this is just how we feel about this. Like this is something I think Martin Fowler has phrased, and the idea is like this is what we think is happening. So you have two axes, investment over time, and basically the features that you gained during that time. And the idea is that if you do no design, then as you move along, it's getting harder and harder and harder to change code. This is something we can relate to, right? Okay. So we do design because we expect this to change. We expect that not only will we not slow down, we will actually speed up. Because all of that effort that we put in our good design at the beginning is allowing us to reuse a lot of the code that we wouldn't be able to reuse with bad design. That's the idea. And it does sound reasonable. But the very important part of this is this part. That when you do no design, you start out fast, and then with good design, you spend a lot of time just thinking about the good design at the beginning. What does that mean? It means that there is a design payoff line, which means I need to get to a number of features before it is worth to do design. Problem is that when I get to the number of features, the ship has sailed. So that's not great, but maybe we can always argue that why not just do the design? We know that eventually that's going to be the case. So if we are responsible, yeah, there is this MVP. And I don't mean Microsoft Professional, I mean minimum viable product. So the thing is, when you start out with a new project, you don't know if it's going to be successful. So you want to spend as little money as possible to test if that's a good idea, to test if you at all want to build that into that full-featured thing. So what ends up happening is that almost every successful project starts out with no design, or at least, well, maybe not no design, but like subpar design. Even the very senior engineer is going to be under tremendous time pressure, especially if that senior engineer is a co-founder and has money in it, right? So there is going to be this immense pressure, and shortcuts will be taken. And it seems like, and my assumption is that the reason every successful company has a lot of legacy code is this. Because to become a successful company, you need to hack at first. But then you need to somehow fix that. Because like this is your investment risk, right? You want to minimize this, and that difference is substantial. And that's why we have that. So the idea is, okay, we accept that at the beginning, we do need to hack, and then maybe we can fix it later. That would be great. And then you would ask probably that, is that the rewrite? Isn't that the part where we should do a rewrite? And no, not necessarily. This could be like gradually cleaning up code, and in many cases that will work, but not always. But before I move forward, I would like to rephrase cumulative features to product attractiveness. Why? The reason is that I don't really care how many features you have. Like, how many of you have ever chosen a product because it has more features without looking at the actual features? Like, most of the time we choose a product over the other because there are specific features that we are interested in. And fun fact, 70% of what we build as engineers is rarely or never used, which means that if we knew what we shouldn't build, we could spend 2/3 of our time on the beach. Probably would just work more. But the idea is that so product attractiveness is important because this is really what's measuring your product success. How many customers can you win? And this, when you think about this, there is one other aspect of like if your product, like what really matters isn't if your product is great. What really matters is it better than the competition. because if your product sucks, but all the other competition sucks more, you're still going to win customers, right? And this is something I learned as part of this thing. So Lean Poker is a workshop, a day-long workshop, gamified thingy. You have teams building poker bots, and every few seconds, these poker bots play a game of poker against each other, and each team is collecting points. What you see here is the number of points each team has after a number of minutes or hours, and the black dots are when they deployed. This is like about 6 hours. Notice how many black dots there are. Like, this is crazy. What's going on in Lean Poker is crazy. But the point that I want to make is that what you see there, like, when does someone go down? They go down when they are slightly less good at poker than the other team. And it's a very good, it's a good metaphor for real business because of that. Yeah, it's just side note that, and it's really nice with these graphs, very similar to what we see in the design summary. So going back, so what happens if you decide to rewrite? Let's assume that we have our product, we got to a point, we decide to rewrite. What happens is that you are not delivering new product attractiveness, you're just staying on the same level, and then your competitor comes, and maybe they were just a little bit better, but or worse, but because you slowed down, they can overtake you. And what happens is, about at this point, your CTO will freak out and gonna say, you gotta stop this rewrite nonsense because we are losing to the competition. And that's the right decision from them, by the way. So it seems like we have to throw away all that rewrite. And worst case scenario, it was in the branch, and we never get to enjoy any of that beautiful rewrite that we did. So what's the implicit assumption that I'm making? And I don't want you to say it just yet, because the next section is going to be me showing you rewrites that were successful after all. But what I want you to pay attention to is, what is the pattern? What is the thing that is similar in these projects that doesn't fit with the explanation that I just made? Okay? Let's look at these case studies. The abandoned platform. So how many of you know Prezi? No? Oh, okay. More people than I expected. Okay, so Prezi was built on our favorite ActionScript. What happened to ActionScript? Yeah, exactly. Now, here is Prezi, and they have a product that is successful, a product that they don't want to lose, but they need to move away from ActionScript. So they need to rewrite it in JavaScript. And they started rewriting it. And first, it looked like a total failure, because it turned out that a lot of the things that were easy in ActionScript are really, really hard in JavaScript, especially with the kind of stuff that Prezi was doing. Like, at one point, they actually recompiled font rendering code from Linux with C++ code, and then recompiled it into JavaScript just so that they have that font rendering code, and it didn't work. So they were pretty much cornered. And then after a while, there was one very important decision in the company. And that decision was, we are going to get rid of backwards compatibility. They couldn't make the new Prezi, the JavaScript Prezi, they couldn't make it compatible with my ActionScript simply due to these issues that were it was just impossible to create the same product. And they decided to okay, we cannot create the same product, but what if we created a better product? So they started building the new Prezi in JavaScript. It had less features, and yet they released it. It was called Prezi Next at the time. And when Prezi Next was released, it was marketed as a business business product. And basically, for a long time, they had Prezi Classic and Prezi Next as competing products. Like, both were available. You could use your existing presentations with ActionScript. You could build your new ones with JavaScript, or you could even build new ones with ActionScript for a while. After a while, they, of course, disabled that. But for a long time, these two products were running in parallel. And the next, Prezi Next was actually had less features, but people, like businesses, still chose it because it wasn't ActionScript, like for security reasons. So that was the idea. And then eventually they phased out the ActionScript version. By now you only have Prezi, which used to be Prezi Next. They just dropped the Next. So that's the first story. Next story. That was actually yeah, that's one of the points where I will refer back to a talk today. So there was this talk about with idempotency in its name. So we had a monolith, and then we decided to create little microservices. And this product that we had was basically a workflow engine, so you could just create a graph of events that were linked up with each other. And while it was a monolith, that was great. But once we decided that we make it possible for people to build microservices that become these little boxes, and then these microservices started to fail in ways that we didn't expect, because as a monolith, that monolith fails at once. So we actually had no clue, and that's when we actually also had to learn about idempotency and the Zaga pattern, which didn't come up today. But if you like that talk about idempotency, look for my previous talk called Learning to Fall, and it's kind of almost like a continuation of that talk from this morning. It focuses on how to use idempotency to your advantage. But the point is that we had this failure, and the problem was that it really cost us money. So we really had to fix this fast. And the decision that we made was we looked at the code base and realized that we have about, I don't know, 20 to 30 places where we need to rethink error handling. And then what we did is we created this list. We actually correlated it to the logs, looked at the number of errors that were happening. A lot of those were recoverable, but still cause issues. And then we started to fix them one by one. And while we were fixing, we were actually refactoring those parts. And then in a few months, we could actually get rid of it. But the really important part was that we started with the big ones that actually deliver the most value. And then we eventually got to the point where the code base was not just clean, but didn't have the errors. And then there was this air imports project. That was also something I did myself. So there was a daily import that we had to run for our customers. A problem with that daily import was that it took 25 hours. Most days don't have 25 hours. I mean, there are days that have 25 hours. Kudos to you if you know which day is that. You know it, great. Sorry? Daylight savings time. Exactly. Anyway, but, just finishing in one day, a daily import only once a year, that doesn't really cut it. So we need to fix it. And here is the thing that we noticed. This import, you had a million settings, a ton of settings. But the thing is, there was only one customer that had that 25-hour import. So we looked at what settings that customer uses, and we did something very crazy. We just took that specific set of settings, wrote a single SQL query, and then just added that on top as a hack. So basically, we had a router injected in the code base, and that router would look at it. Is this the specific set of settings that we can handle with this query? Yeah. All right, then do it with the query. And otherwise, it would go the old way. Guess how fast that import became? Yeah? 3. So 3 minutes, which is great. But then, of course, business was like, oh, that's great. We want to have more of that because we have customers who have 12-hour imports. And that's also something we don't want. So yeah, we said, okay, show us those customers. We looked at the logs, found the customers that had the long imports, looked at their settings. Oh, they are just using this one extra setting. Okay. Then maybe we can tweak that query so that they're, depending on the setting, it is slightly different query. And then add to the router that, oh yeah, that parameter can also be this, or maybe a set of different parameters. Oh, now we actually solved the problem for a bunch of other customers. And we did that. Like one by one, we always started with the customers that had the biggest problems. But in a few months, we had a brand new import function that had nothing to do with the old one, was much faster, much cleaner, and we could delete the old one. Well, it wasn't that easy because after about 3 months, the leadership decided that this project has gotten where we want it to be. So we had a few more settings remaining that weren't that important. So for a while, we had the two imports running together, and then half a year later, they said they wanted a change in the import, and that's when we said, you know, we cannot do this change until that part is done, so let's finish it. And then eventually it got finished. But like, it took some patience. Okay, next story. Becoming a platform. That was also an interesting one. So we had this nice product, and at some point, the product manager comes and says, you know, we really need to platformize this. We need our customers to be able to expand on our platform. We said, okay. So what does that mean? We need an API. All right. Problem is that like our internal architecture is really ugly. Like we really don't want to show that to the customers. It looks ugly. Okay. So what do you need to make that API? Well, we should probably incrementally refactor parts of it and then expose the clean parts already as API calls. Well, that works. So that's what we did. We basically created stories around what are the API endpoints that we want to build. And then as we were building them, we basically just cleaned up the code around that part and then exposed the API. And then there is another one. That's a Microsoft story. Visual Studio Code, right? That's the new one. Yeah. So originally we had Visual Studio, right? And then the issue was that, like, I'm a web developer. I always have been. And back in those days, I was definitely one of those people who were like, what? This has to do something with Microsoft? Leave me alone. And yeah, there was a huge community that was thinking that way of Microsoft. And they wanted to reach this market. And then what they did is, like, Visual Studio was, at the time, really bulky, like a lot of features, and like, it was a monster. And part of the reason other editors were more successful at the time, because they were lightweight. So they built something lightweight, and this is VS Code. So basically, they just created a competition for themselves, built a new product that had less features, but was more attractive to a different kind of developer, mostly web developers. So, what's the pattern? Any guesses? Hmm? Yeah, the being incremental.
A lot of features were dropped from the rewrites. If we only served a couple of users,
Mm.
the Visual Studio Code has a lot less features than Visual Studio.
Mm.
It's a smaller project than the original.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of it. That's really a part of it. But basically, there are two things. If you really want to boil out, yeah, one more.
Random refactors and business value.
Yeah, basically, when the refactor was adding business value, exactly. So the implicit assumptions was that during the rewrite we don't deliver value to the business. This wasn't true for either of these projects. All of those projects had very specific business value. And the rewrite is an all or nothing project. That wasn't true for either of these. All of them were delivered in small chunks. And I guess that's the key. Because the way you can sell to the business is by thinking about what is the thing that I can enable with this refactor? What is the thing that I can enable with this new design? And like one of the things that happens a lot is that a product is kind of locked into place, and when you find yourself telling your product manager that, yeah, we cannot build this because it is conflicting with this other feature, or back in the day we made this decision and it's making it really hard to create a good UX for this feature, stuff like that, that's a really good sign that probably you could build a smaller, more lightweight product that has better features. And remember, like 70% of the stuff that we build is never used. You really just need to focus on the 30% when you are rewriting. And not just that you need to focus on the 30%, but you have learned so much in these years when you were building that monstrosity. And now you have a chance to build something much better. So one of the very important keys to a successful rewrite is that you shouldn't rewrite, you should reinvent. You should create a new product that is better, more exciting, something that your CTO is going to be excited about. Okay? Or if you are keeping the same features, at least make sure there is another business advantage like performance or stability or so on. Okay. And this all comes back to this one sentence. This is the first principle of the Agile Manifesto. And yeah, we had this talk about not liking Scrum. I also don't like Scrum. I have to say that. But I do like the Agile Manifesto because there are some very important thoughts in there. But I don't like it when people treat it as a religion. But this one sentence, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. This is something I live by. This is, if you go to my LinkedIn page, by the way, you can go to there and feel free to connect me. But if you go there, this is the sentence you will find on my page, up on the banner, because that's so important for me. And basically that's also what we have with these rewrites, right? So just to summarize the going back to the original case studies, like there were two big groups here. One group was creating your own competition. Like imagine what if someone who saw our product maybe was an employee of the company previously, and this person decides to take on us. They decide to build a better product. What would that product be? And what if we were that company building that better product? And there are companies who do that. Um, Actually, there was also another interesting example. It was an accounting software. They even created a fake company and built the new product as that fake company, just so that they isolate themselves from any potential damage at the beginning. But eventually, they admitted that it's the same product and renamed it, and now it's their main product. So you can do that kind of rewrite where you think about, okay, what would be the better product? And the other one is incremental replace with user value, where you say, okay, I want to keep my existing software. I don't think it's that bad that it's worth rewriting, but maybe I can find a reason to rewrite, like performance, like stability, um, like creating an API. These are reasons where you can find actual user stories that kind of drive these refactoring steps. And then I already did this talk until this point, actually at a fairly large conference. And at the end, someone asked the question. And I think that question was genius. So I included the answer in the talk. And this is the rewrite quadrant hypothesis. So we have two different axes. One is rewrite with no customer value and rewrite with clear customer value. This is the one of the two assumptions that I made, right? Do we have customer value or don't we? And then the other one is all or nothing or incrementally. And the thing that that person asked is, I talked about this one. Like I started the talk with that quadrant, and I told you that it's like almost definitely going to fail. And then I talked about that one, where it's an incremental delivery with clear customer value. And I told you that it's usually successful, like you can make it work. But what about the other two? And that question was like, blew my mind. Here is this answer I came up with eventually after thinking about it and testing it out. If you have incremental value, even if there is no customer value, but at least you can measure the developer value, there is a chance that this is possible. One example is if you look, you can look up that talk. It was at Craft Conference. Christine Weststein was talking about how they did a large-scale refactor at Shopify. And that was this case. They basically had like the complexity measures of the code were projected on screens in the office. And they made a competition around it within the company who can get their complexity down. So that's also an interesting approach. But like if you can choose, I would still try to create customer value. But it turns out that this might also be successful. And the other one is all or nothing with clear customer value. Like any project that is all or nothing is likely to fail. Like if you have to invest a lot of time without any gains, eventually business is going to lose patience. So you need to show some value in the process. Okay, so one more last thing. This is, by the way, practically the end of the talk, but I do want to show you something. I mentioned Limpoker before. That's the workshop that I'm running fairly often in different places. And this is just like 2 minute, no, 1 minute promo for the next workshop that I'm going to hold. Maybe you will be interested. So let's see. I hope. Okay, we don't have sound. Can we make this sound go more loud? No, I can't make it go. Maybe I can. Okay, let's see if that's enough. Up. I know exactly what it feels like to be under constant pressure to deliver more faster. Sometimes you just wish you could finally finish something. I'm Ivett Ördög, and if you come to my Lean Poker Masterclass, you will experience firsthand how you can deliver more value with less stress.
Lean poker is excellent for breaking some myths people have about how good their practices are so that they can shore them up, and to give people an idea of what the really important parts of XP or Scrum or Kanban method are.
Experience how continuous deployment looks like, or tackling a problem together to experience that.
Like shining a big light on team dynamics and seeing what happens.
There's so much to learn, and I think with every team there are different dynamics, a variety of different things you can take away.
But Lean Poker isn't a traditional training. You will be in the heart of the action, competing to build the best poker bot. It's not about winning though. It's about the feedback you gain in the process and about learning how to win.
Lean poker is getting punched in the face. It's not so much that you learn during lean poker, is that you learn in the week after lean poker, where you're like, why does my face hurt?
The reality of the pressure was really surprising. I knew it would be a thing, but I didn't realize how much pressure that would put on and how that would affect us to make a move that put us so far behind and not even realize it.
Reality punches back much more in this format than it does in like a code retreat. In code retreat, they often have a changing requirement, but the thing is that almost never works because you're not at a point where the requirement is even in play when it changes. Where here, we genuinely had changing requirements.
Like as a crucible for really teaching how powerful iterative and incremental delivery can be, this is the place.
See you on the 28th of May at Craft Conference. So this is something I do, and if you really want to learn in practice how to really be an effective team, and just as JB said, like breaking the myth you have about how successful or how effective you are, and maybe how well Scrum works for you. This is one way. I would be really happy to see you either at Craft or another workshop. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.